Hey everybody, Jay here. Just want to hop on real quick. I'm down by the river, as you can see. It started to rain again, and the wind is picking up. So my solitude moment on the docks there has been interrupted by weather, as it often is. But I just wanted to hop on and just share with you a few thoughts. Been, reminiscing about a lot of things today, and some of them, very, moving and emotional moments for me today. And I think I want to share a little story first, and then share some thoughts real quick. Some of you know this story, but some of you might not know. Growing up in a abusive home, Christmases were quite difficult. And this one Christmas, which is really the epitome of, and really kind of descriptive of all the Christmases that we had at our house. There was one year. Now we had a very small Christmas tree, artificial, like a 3-foot high artificial tree that my parents must have had way before I was born. It was really old, but it was the Christmas tree that we had, and it was decorated with very few ornaments that were, that my parents must have had for years. And this happened to be one year where there was actually just a few presents underneath the tree, and often there weren't any presents, and so Christmas was. I didn't really understand Christmas a lot when I was little, but I remember this one year, that my sister and I had saved up our money during the year. I shoveled sidewalks and driveways and mowed lawns and stuff like that all during the and I'd saved up some money. My sister had saved up some money, and we had bought my mom's a new set of frying pans, and we were quite excited about that. And my father was notorious for having not just a bad temper, but a huge, violent temper. And it could take just a very little thing to set him off. And I don't remember what did set him off. But a couple of days before Christmas, he flew into a rage and took the Christmas tree, threw it outside in the snowbank, threw all the presents outside in the snowbank, took the frying pans that we had bought down to his workshop and destroyed them, bent them up in the vise and hammered and whatever, and then threw them out in the snowbank. And this was all in the space of like 15 minutes or 20 minutes. He just went on his rage and then sat down in a chair and watched TV and smoked cigarettes. I mean, and none of us could say anything, could show any kind of reaction, because that violence would have been turned towards us, as it often was. And, for days we watched, that, the tree out in the snowbank and the presents. And I think eventually he let us bring the presents inside and open them, but I don't even remember what I got that year. It was kind of over with. But I do remember just my mom, just a little bit more of her dying on the inside. Not that frying pans were, the epitome of my mom's wish list, because she couldn't cook, and but it was just a gesture, I think, from two of her kids that meant a lot to her. So the point of that is, that's kind of how Christmases were for me. And so when I got out on my own, and before I met Christine, Christmases were they weren't that meaningful to me. I celebrated them with friends and a couple special families and things like that. As a bachelor, I was invited over a lot to other places. And so, but Christmas, really didn't mean anything. But when I met Christine, and even before we got married, she started to rescue Christmas for me. And started to slowly reveal the wonder of what Christmas was. And obviously, as a Christian, I knew that it was all about how we celebrate Jesus' birth. And I was all into that, but I was really emotionally distant to this holiday. And it was her gentle, insistent, persistent love of this holiday that won me over, that made me feel come alive again on the inside during this holiday season, during Christmas, because it was her favorite holiday. So this being the second Christmas without her it's difficult and it's hard, and I was just having an emotional moment before I came on. And we have yet to kind of reconstruct what Christmas should be as a family, and we've tried, and we're still working that out. Still having difficulty working that out. But back to the story that I told you at the beginning of this about my father throwing all the presents in the Christmas tree out in the snow. The first year that I met Christine, I did spend Christmas with her family, but prior to that, a group of us went down to the Bowery and down in New York City to work in one of the soup kitchens there. And I remember, for some reason, being asked to speak to one of the chapel times. And how it would work is that they would, bring people in to feed them, but you would have to sit through a chapel service first while one group is being fed, and then once that was done, the next group would be and that happened all day long. And for some reason, someone invited me to go speak during one of those services. And I just remember talking about the shepherds and how they were an unwanted group, a smelly group, a group of untrustworthy characters in a lot of ways back then, and certainly not wanted in town. But yet that's who the angels appeared to tell the story to first, was to the shepherds. And they became the first evangelists after they had seen the Messiah. And I remember relating that to them. But before I even began to relate that to them, I remember standing up there as the small little chapel was being filled with sleepy, tired, drunk men. Obviously cold. It was warm in the chapel, and every once in a while the door in the back would open up to let more people in, and it was snowing, and God brought back that memory to me of my father throwing out all the gifts in the snow, and he says, I want you to tell them that they are gifts, and I want to bring them back home, inside. And God connected my bad memories to that memory of God loving on these men who were lost and desperate. The chapel service was over, and the men went in to go and to eat. And I remember there was one young man who was my age at the time. I was in my 20s, and he was in his 20s. He was living on the street. And he related to me the story about how his father threw him out just days prior, and he had nowhere else to go. But he so wanted to be home. And I prayed for him, and I talked to him and listened to him, and he went in to get a meal. And I always remember that young man. I don't know the rest of his story, but I'd like to think that God rescued him that night, that day. So the day was over, and I went back to Christine's house and celebrated Christmas with her family. And I related to the story to Christine, who wasn't my bride yet, but certainly was my fiance. And I remember crying. And I remember her talking to me about how God restores things. She had a beautiful heart. She understood restoration, probably better than most. And she somehow related the story to my own restoration, what God did for me. And it was this kind of heart that Christine used to restore Christmas for me, to restore the beauty of Christmas, the true meaning of Christmas, and the reason to celebrate Christmas. And she made it special. She made it warm. She made it inviting. She was so excited about it. And that's kind of what we missed during this time, is her excitement. I can't reproduce that. It was something that she did that I don't think anybody can reproduce for us. But at the same time, in memory of the great heart that she had, I want to think about and pause about, if you could imagine being a young couple having to travel a long ways into a very small town, an insignificant town in the Roman Empire, being fully occupied by a foreign force, having to answer a government decree that you had no reason to think that it was worthwhile, and you're traveling with a pregnant woman, a young girl. You find yourself with no place to be, and how desperate and how impossible that situation must have seemed at the time. But I appreciate this couple. I appreciate Joseph and Mary and the absolute faithfulness to what God had asked them to do. And I'm amazed at those two, and I can't wait to meet them someday. Being the parents of Jesus, of being the parents of the Messiah. And I am blown away by God's bold plan of salvation or redemption, that he would send himself as a little baby in order to redeem the world, that he did this out of love, that for God so loved he gave. And that's really why we celebrate this time. For God so loved he gave. I'm grateful that he gave us the Messiah, obviously. I'm grateful that God offered redemption and forgiveness and restoration, and he put himself into our world in order to redeem us back to himself. And he shepherds us back to the Father's heart, which is always amazing to me. This is Christmas. And so, I wish you all a Merry Christmas. I hope that you're surrounded by friends and family, even though this pandemic has made a lot of that so difficult. I hope you can see the Messiah in all of it. I hope you can see him and feel him and know him in ways that you haven't known him yet. Jesus is always shepherding our hearts towards the Father. That's why he's the great shepherd. So I do wish you a Merry Christmas. And yeah, Christmas for us is difficult, and for our family will be subdued and confusing and conflicted. And it's Christmas Eve, and I'm down by the river, and I'm trying to find something here. I'm not sure what that is yet. But at the same time, the other part of my heart is joyful, knowing that God sent his Son into this world, this dark, cold world that was lost and needed a light. And he shone the light so brightly so that we can know the Father and know his love and be born into a new family. And that brings me joy, and that brings me peace. I miss Christine desperately. I am missing her more than ever. But I know my Redeemer lives, and I know he's here. And I just wanted to hop on and say Merry Christmas to everybody. those of you who knew Christine and knew her well, you know that she loved this time of year. And she would wish you a Merry Christmas as well. But from all the Cookinghams, and from me especially, Merry Christmas. Please know that I love you, but please also know that God loves you very much. Cancer is painful and just sucks. Cancer sucks. But God is good. God is always good. God was so good that he sent himself into this world. He put skin on himself in order to redeem us to himself. It's a mystery, powerful mystery, but so true and so kind of God to do that. So please, have a Merry Christmas. I love you all. God bless you.